Under the dim hum of the council's judgment chamber, she stood silent, her wrists bound with suppression cuffs and her muscles twitching beneath the orange prisoner's suit marked 7777. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was deliberate. The guards surrounding her sneered, a mix of synthetic and organic species, confident that the woman they had dragged through half the galaxy was finally neutralized. The council's eyes bore into her with amusement, condescension dripping from every word spoken. They called her uncivilized, a relic of a savage world that should have burned itself out long before entering galactic affairs. Her crimes were read out like a showpiece. Destruction of a black site research station, elimination of elite units from 3 different species, and an escape from a zero-atmo penal transport that had never failed before. They called her an animal, a stain on humanity's already tarnished record. The accusations echoed across the chamber, each word more mocking than the last. A few counselors chuckled when a guard mentioned that she hadn't spoken a word since capture. One of them joked that perhaps the humans had finally learned when to keep their mouths shut. Others laughed. The guards joined in. Her silence fed their arrogance like fuel to a dying flame. They didn't understand silence was her sharpest edge. Her restraint wasn't compliance. It was study. Her eyes flicked from counselor to counselor, mapping posture, dominance, and power. Her breathing was slow, steady. Every heartbeat timed like a weapon waiting to be fired. They thought they were passing judgment. She was calculating odds. Counselor Escarex leaned forward, forked tongue sliding across scaled lips. He asked her if all humans bled so easily, or if she would at least offer a better scream than the last one. The crowd laughed again. He offered a jest about Earth's primitive history, wars over borders, genocide, extinction, tribal division. He called humans emotionally weak and physically unremarkable. He waved a claw toward her, daring her to prove otherwise. Still, she said nothing. She didn't need to. She'd seen more war than all of them combined. She'd crawled through fire with shattered bones, fought in vacuum, endured psychological torture techniques banned across the quadrant. Not because she was ordered to. Because someone had to finish the mission. Because she refused to break. They assumed she was broken because she didn't fight the suppressor field. Because she didn't scream when dragged through the streets of the Keleth system in chains. Because she didn't lash out in the cell transport. That silence unnerved a few junior officers, but the council interpreted it as docility. The mock trial concluded with a flourish. The verdict wasn't debated, it was announced. She would be sent to a mining asteroid in the Altherian expanse, a place where prisoners were worked until their bones shattered from gravity fluctuations. A slow, grinding end. One fitting for a human. As the guards pulled her away, one whispered a bet on how long she'd last. A week? 3 days? Hours maybe. He nudged his partner and laughed. Behind her, the council moved on to the next case, already bored. Down in the cell block, the architecture shifted from ceremonial to purely functional. Steel walls, neon lights, and a faint scent of plasma burns in the recycled air. Her cell was marked with bioscanners, laser tripwires, and motion detectors keyed to her breathing rhythm. The guards locked her inside with extra bolts. She stood in the center, the door closing behind her with a hiss. There was no bed, no food slot, no light beyond the flicker of the hallway outside. They hadn't planned for comfort. They expected her to deteriorate, physically and mentally. She did not sit. She did not sleep. She listened. The hum of the magnetic field, the rotations of the guard patrols, the power pulses in the floor that indicated the suppressor rhythm. Every sound told a story. Every vibration a flaw. Her eyes adjusted quickly. The walls weren't reinforced like they claimed. The suppressor cuffs were old model, likely repurposed from pre-war stock. Even the surveillance nodes flickered every 90 seconds. Time passed. How much, no one could say. She didn't count the seconds. She counted heartbeats. When the guards passed again, laughing about intercepted messages from Earth diplomats complaining about her treatment, she finally moved. The restraints on her wrists flexed against skin that had endured zero-gravity combat, solar radiation, and cryo-resistance. Her muscles shifted with quiet tension. She didn't yank. She pressed slowly outward, testing the points of resistance. A quiet crack echoed through the silence, the first fracture. She paused. Waited. No alarm. The suppressor field had a blind spot during transition pulses. She exploited it. Again. Another crack. The cuffs broke at the joint with a soft metallic snap. She flexed her hands. Blood returned to her fingers like electricity surging back into a power grid. The cell was still. She turned to the door. A monolith of metal to most. But she had studied the seam, the lock mechanism, the torque response. A slow exhale. Then, with a roar not of rage, but resolve, she gripped the edges of the reinforced door. Her muscles erupted with fury. The welds groaned. Sparks cascaded from the hinges. The hallway lit up with emergency red. Guards shouted. Systems tried to lock down. Too late. The door tore free from its frame with a screech that echoed through the corridor like a warning bell. The two guards at the checkpoint froze. One raised a blaster. She hurled the door at him before he could pull the trigger. It hit him like a meteor. The other turned to run. She was already on him. She took his keycard, pressed it against the control panel, and stepped into the corridor without looking back. Sirens blared now. Protocols scrambled to activate. Suppressor turrets failed to respond, fried from the surge she triggered mid-break. The corridor lights flickered in rhythm with her footstep. A tremor spread across the block, not from any structural failure, but from fear. The system had calculated every outcome except this. She didn't run. She walked. Every step was deliberate, every move designed. This was no panic. This was retribution. Not for herself, but for the mockery. The arrogance. The assumption that one species had the right to deem another beneath them. Behind her, cells remained closed. Other prisoners watched silently. Some cheered. Others cowered. They knew something had shifted, not in the prison, but in the galaxy. She reached the central hub. Scanned the guard's chip. The mainframe flickered alive. She didn't hesitate. She knew what she needed. Not escape. Not yet. She wanted the corridor map. She wanted to know where they stored the off-grid surveillance backup. Where they kept records. Where they kept their secret. She found it. Downloaded what she needed onto the guard's neural chip. Slid it into her suit. And turned. More guards approached. 6, maybe 7. Armed, armored. She didn't break stride. End of section. The guards opened fire before they even saw her face. Plasma bolts sliced through the corridor, but she was already moving. Her body twisted through the air, grabbing a length of conduit from the wall mid-motion. She struck the first with enough force to send him flying into the second, crushing armor with the sound of bones shattering underneath. 3 others hesitated. That was enough. She was on them, moving like she'd been built for war. One lost his weapon, another lost consciousness before he realized she was behind him. The 6th tried to activate an auto-turret. She drove his head into the panel before it could lock. The last guard ran. He didn't look back. No one blamed him. Emergency lighting flickered across the facility. AI defense systems scrambled, unsure whether to treat her as an internal malfunction or an invasion force. She triggered motion sensors, override failsafes and security lockdowns, then walked straight through them. Her strength didn't come from weapons or technology. It came from something older, something raw. Command teams watched through surveillance feeds that cut out one by one. No one could explain it. Suppressors failed. Reinforced doors yielded like aluminum. The facility, a fortress buried in protocols and fail-safes, was falling apart at the hands of a single unarmed prisoner. Down in the operations center, panic had replaced mockery. They issued kill orders. Tactical droids deployed. Fire teams moved in formation. A drone swarm launched, programmed to disassemble organic matter on contact. She walked into them without blinking. She tore through steel and synthetic alike. The neural chip she'd taken held a blueprint of the lower command core. She was after more than freedom. She moved toward the prison's heart, a data archive vault. The guards assumed she was trying to erase her record. They didn't realize she was doing the opposite. She stormed through the access gate, bypassed retinal locks using a guard's ruined helmet, and activated the core manually. The central screen flickered as she input her ID code by force, literally driving her fist into the panel until it complied. Every record of her captivity, every transmission mocking her to the council, every surveillance angle that captured their laughter while she was chained. She broadcast it all, across the quadrant, unedited, unfiltered. Council chambers across 3 systems went silent as her transmission played. One screen showed her in chains, being ridiculed. The next showed her ripping open her cell. The next, bodies, fire, smoke. Her voice finally spoke. Not a scream, not a threat. A single phrase. You thought I was caged. You forgot what built the cage. Panic erupted. Counselors who had jeered now whispered about damage control. One ordered a planetary strike on the prison. Another refused. Too much attention, too public. They argued, shouted, blamed. No solution emerged. Inside the prison, she continued. She reached the reactor housing, where emergency power protocols sat guarded by mechs with explosive failsafe. They aimed. She moved faster. One crashed into the wall before it fired. The second didn't get a shot. The third she disabled with a pressure valve from a ruptured pipe. She accessed the main core. Every ounce of energy in the facility could now be routed. She didn't need escape. She needed a monument. She routed power to the transmission array, bypassed every encryption wall. She overrode diplomatic protections. She interrupted a Galactic Senate broadcast mid-session. Her bloodied face filled the feed. No one silences a human. Not anymore. She detonated the prison's core, not to escape but to erase it. A monument built on humiliation and arrogance, turned to dust by the very woman they tried to destroy. The blast shattered comms for half the sector. No remains were found. No escape pod detected. Whispers began instantly. Some claimed she died in the explosion, a martyr. Others said she fled into deep space, using black market warpaths only humans knew. Some believed she'd been recovered by covert Earth operative. The truth didn't matter. The fear did. Back in the core worlds, her message had already changed things. Military protocols across 5 systems now flagged humans as high-risk asset. Any human prisoner was to be isolated, monitored, and treated with extreme caution. Officers were briefed with new doctrines, respect or consequences. Counselor S.K. Rex resigned days later. His replacement referenced the incident only as Event 7777. Behind closed doors, some asked if Earth had sent her as a test. No one had answers. Human diplomats issued no apology. They offered no confirmation. They didn't need to. The footage was enough. On Earth, the story became legend. Not told in official channels, but passed through whispers. Military academies taught it as a case study in asymmetrical response. Civilians whispered it like a ghost story, one that reminded the stars that Earth remembers. A cargo vessel in the rim reported seeing a lone figure walking across a dead moon's surface without a suit, dragging a piece of a broken prison door behind her. No one investigated. In a distant spaceport, a child stood before a mural depicting a chained woman ripping steel from concrete, flames behind her, defiance in her eyes. On the corner of the mural, carved in human script, was a single number, 7777. The Galactic Council no longer laughed at human prisoners. They rewrote policies. They built new suppressor tech. They reinforced cells. But they also remembered. Because in every high-security facility, no matter the species, there's always a contingency plan filed under one silent protocol: never underestimate a human. Especially not one who's quiet. Especially not one who's alone. because sometimes, what looks like a cage is just the beginning of a reckoning. And what walks out of it isn't just a survivor. It's a warning.